COIN, Community-Oriented Integration Network, is a network of friends, people of experience, who explore how to develop local communities for health, compassionate communities. And today we're wrapping up what we're doing with a compendium of ideas that we've developed over the last year or so, stimulated by the UK political developments. But how could we influence developments with the ideas that COIN stands for, and whether or not we can embed them inside various people's manifestos. And COIN has always been a network of friends who just naturally evolve from one place to another as the agenda changes. It's a highly effective network, really, I think, because it's just full of activists. And what COIN does more than anything else is just encourage its members to get on with what they're doing with added gusto, rather than particularly taking a pressure group approach internationally. Two things. What should we now be doing about the compendium of ideas and using that to advance things? And what might be the emerging things or the emerging needs, particularly internationally?
But I don't think you need to apologize for trying to take advantage of the current moment in the UK right now. I think if we know anything about the kind of change we're trying to make with COIN happens, if we look at a short-term time horizon, it often makes us very pessimistic. We have when we step back, we see an overall trajectory toward people working together better, toward evolution, toward more cooperation. But in the short term, there's so many undulations up and down. Right now, it feels to me like we're in at least where I live, in a very much of a downturn time. But when I step back, I get hopeful. And when I look at the document and see the ideas there and take that longer frame, it makes me hopeful. And when it feels like it's in a downturn for me, I don't feel like I have a great on-the-ground example of where these ideas are really fully actualized right now. What I'm trying to do is kind of hold on to some seed corn, plant some seedlings for people that are trying to do this in harsh environments, so that when the environments do change, that we're not starting from scratch. There is a little retained memory of people that have worked in the way that we're talking about here, and that when there's light, when these seedlings that have been kept in the shade can sprout out, we've actually nurtured them enough that they can sprout out. So I think, looking at the moment you have in the UK and thinking about what we can do to take advantage of that, I think anything we can do to have some on-the-ground examples of where we prepared ourselves with ideas and on-the-ground examples and can take advantage when the moment is right, I think is exactly what we should be doing.
And you set up the Annals of Family Medicine once upon a time. Is that?
Yes, I never wanted to be a journal editor, but there was a unique opportunity with some organizations coming together, and I was the first editor of Annals of Family Medicine. Thought I would do that as a startup, but ended up doing it for 17 years. The North American Primary Care Research Group feels like home to me. It has North American in its name, but really it's a very international organization. A typical meeting will have 17 or 18 countries represented. The UK having usually a very strong representation. The next meeting is going to be in Toronto in November, and so if you want to go to that, you don't have to put up with trying to go through U.S. customs. So it's a phenomenal group of like-minded people, and seriously, it's a hassle.
But before the meeting ends, let's just pick at that little side swipe there.
I'm struggling to figure out where I should be going.
You've been doing that all your life, haven't you? I think, yes.
Pretty much, yeah. I know I'm born in New York. I went to medical school at Columbia in the 70s. Became quite political in that reality. Practiced family medicine in California for 25 years. When our county hospital was closed, I left to do a reverse migration to Europe. And my father was Hungarian, and I tried to get back to Hungary, but closest I could get was Bratislava in Slovakia. I was working for USAID, helping with the transition in Eastern Europe after the wall came down. Didn't like working for USAID. Ended up in the UK and worked as a fellow with the King's Fund for quite a few years. And but still wanted to do international work, and I ended up working for WHO. Became head of communications for the European region, and retired from that in the in the early 2000s and started a company that's been contracting back with WHO and other intergovernmental agencies to do health communication work since that time. I'm still working and trying to figure out how we can all get out of the mess that we're in. And I totally believe that we're all internationalists, and there is no place for nationalism. There's lots of stuff to do on a local level or on a national level, but the world's totally a mess. And we're all influenced by everybody else is mess. And I think a lot of it, and we've been working hard on writing a book at the moment, and it's a lot focused on trying to figure out why there's such a mess. And we think it's because a lot we've been focusing on individual issues and that we haven't been getting down to the infrastructures that support all that. And so, and we think those are public health infrastructures, and that we need to get that right. And they're all our infrastructures. So we're trying to elaborate what those are. We think there are social, material, institutional, learning, and ecological infrastructures. And if you put the acronym together, it says SMILE, and we're hoping to get a smile.
Maybe laughter is the best medicine has always been right.
Well, to be sure. And I think that we've been affected a lot by extraction approaches, attention orientations, robber barons. We're talking about all that kind of stuff. And I think we need to all talk to each other with that. And we'd love to reach out to you all to be involved in this stuff and to start telling stories about how people like yourselves are doing things that are moving in a good direction, even though overwhelmingly we're all being influenced by very negative forces at the moment.
And do you have any ideas, Franklin, of how we should do the idea in the compendium and even the direction of this group moving forward from now? And inside that question, even a sort of a hint at whether or not WHO might be interested in some of this stuff.
Yeah, someone just sent me this all this stuff that some of our leaders in the UK are very anti-WHO. And I think you're doing amazing stuff. I think the world should know about it, and link to it and learn from it, and you can learn from others about how to move that ahead. I mean, those are all strong, important things, and it needs to be communicated widely. Yeah.
Good. My name's Carrie. I am a master's student of Laura Calamos, and she invited me here after we had some discussion about just healthcare, international healthcare, and collaboration. The majority of my experience has been in pediatric emergencies, so I feel like I've been able to see some of the negative aspects of people not having a community around them because those people in the United States end up in the ER. So I love the work that you guys are doing. I think it's very much something that we need in the US as well. The puzzle is how to get it there, but that'll be a discussion for the future.
And you're thinking,
yeah, no, I was doing the office all day and I just needed to get out and move, and I hope that's okay. And you know how it is. So I'm calling in from the top of a hill in Wicklow. This is my second meeting, and I missed the last one, so I'm feeling a little bit out of the loop. But I'm trying to catch up. I grew up in quite a holistic general practice household, and by having trained as an architect, I split and have set up a social enterprise which basically aims to build connection and empathy between neighbours, trying to improve social cohesion throughout Ireland. So that's basically what we do, and just really here to see the connections and learn and see where there's opportunities to collaborate. Thanks.
Sounds very timely with the publication of Alan Milburn's report on youth, which I think is going to hit the headlines in the UK quite soon.
Tony, I'm a retired GP in Brent, northwest London. My clinical interest in older people translated into organisational development, and now I'm involved in Age UK big time, chair of Age UK London, which campaigns for an age-friendly Brent, and led on a campaign to get my local borough signed up as a age-friendly borough. So I'm into my local community in all sorts of different ways and fostering conversations with people who would otherwise feel excluded, conversations inviting change and development.
I'm Sanjay Gupta. I'm a retired psychiatrist and a fellow of the Faculty of Public Health, and I've been involved in some way with this group for about 10 years now. And as I was saying to some of you before the meeting proper started, if we're looking for an area to focus on in the future, I think the health and well-being, particularly the mental health of children and young people, would be one area which would be well worth. In my travels, I keep coming across reports saying that the children and young people's mental health is an area of serious and growing concern, both in this country and in other countries. And that is important for all kinds of reasons. It's important in its own right because children and young people are, of course, the future. But it's also important because they're also they are the workforce of the future. And many studies have shown that when you ask them, ask people, what is it that prevents you from getting into work? What is it that prevents you from working effectively? One of the most common responses they give is it's due to their poor mental health. So this is an area which I think should be of concern to all of us, young and old, wherever we are in this country and in other countries.
Well, let's think about that as a next step, because Estelle Morris's publication yesterday in London suggested that I think it's 1 in 10 of all white working class children. Who's going to fail when they're age 5, who's going to age 11 when they're age 5, when they're going to fail at age 17 when they're age 11, and 1 in 10 don't actually have even the most basic GCSE qualifications for English, which is a minimum requirement for most employments in the UK. So there's another huge link there between mental health, loss of purpose, and schooling and the educational system, which sounds like a bit up Coin Street.
Steve Eilish, I'm a retired academic general practitioner. I've worked in the area, the geographical area that I'm now occupying for the last 30-something years.
Everybody, good to see you all. I guess everyone knows me from all the emails that come to you, but I've been with London Journal of Primary Care and then with COIN, for quite some time now. All the topics we cover, are close to my heart, so it makes it a bit easier to support a group you actually believe in. So here I am.
Delighted to be here this evening, but I am only going to be able to join for a short time, I'm afraid. I don't know if you picked up my earlier email, Paul. I'm the chief exec of PCC. We're a social enterprise, not-for-profit, and we do 3 things in the main. We do primary care support. That's for commissioners and for providers across all 4 contractor groups. Support to neighbourhoods and support to community services to develop services, to thrive, to build collaborations, networks, etc. We also do a lot of leadership development, action learning sets. So again, we've talked previously, Paul, about how we could support the spread of COIN principles through some of our work. Finally, we do event management support as well as a third stream, as well as PCC. PCC as a social enterprise funds NHS networks, which gives you the web space for COIN. So we're really pleased to be able to support that and do that as part of our social mission. So that's where I've joined.
The present idea is that David Peters, who should be joining us tonight to talk about the Journal of Holistic Healthcare, will be a kind of home for published papers around COIN type thing, with the compendium as a starter. The compendium in a way frames future papers about how do you do this in practical reality. And then some of those papers may be then rewritten or doubly published in peer-reviewed journals like the British Journal of General Practice, so that they can get citation without stopping the flow of a group of friends trying to develop for the 21st century the ideas. And then, with that as a sort of the academic background and the theoretical background there, from that would come a stream of blogs that you'd be putting out to your, is it 25,000 members a week?
Yeah, that's the membership on NHS Networks.
So that we would drip feed these ideas out by one-page blogs week by week, backed up by the JHH, which would publish them, backed up by peer-reviewed papers, which would be some other version of JHH. How's that feeling to you so far? And then after that, carry on to whatever you think.
Yeah, that is absolutely fine. We can push anything you wish out through NHS Networks, and you've got your own space on there as well. We published another blog last week for you. I think you know that. The next one will go out in 3 weeks' time. I think we've got a couple waiting to go. What I'm quite keen to do, and what I am doing on each of the blogs, is it's not just going out through networks. PCC has its own newsletters to practices, to primary care networks. So really getting to the heart of developing neighbourhoods, hopefully, and also to ICBs. So what I've done is I've put links to the blogs in those newsletters as well to try and get a little bit more traction. So the total number of people it's going to weekly is closer to 29,000. After they go out, I know you're getting some requests of people to join the network, and I think there's now 77 members of the COIN network that's hosted on NHS Networks. I know it's a relatively small number, but at least it's growing, and it grows after each blog. I'm really happy to look how we can work with you more, to see how we can spread. And I think the key thing is success stories in the current climate. I think evidence of how resources have been saved, and resources in the wider sense, not just financial, and wins such as reduced admissions, A&E attendances, which I know can be demonstrated, and hitting the, I hate to say it, but the target areas for neighbourhoods in their first years, which includes obviously people with frailty, etc. So I think it's almost trying to give success stories and get a bit of a snowball movement, saying this is possible and it's going to hit the right areas for ICBs and for developing neighbourhoods. And we're just, very happy to support in any way that we can. We can do facilitation and that type of work as well. But obviously, if we're putting staff on it, we would just need to make sure that whoever's asked for it is paying us for that. But for communication out, we can do that absolutely no cost. Just keep feeding us stuff. Short articles, top tips go down the best. We don't have international networks. The furthest that we have worked is Jersey, Isle of Man, and Wales. We do a lot of work in Wales, but we don't have international networks. I'd be very happy if you wanted to develop any, and you're more than happy to develop them and give us contacts. We could do that on networks. We could invite people in, but we don't have the mail lists or the coverage for international networks.
Lovely to see everybody here. It's a really great group of people for this evening. I'm very interested in the ideas you've said, Paul, about how we can evolve COIN discussions into new areas. And I think we talked a little bit before we started properly. My feeling is that maybe at the moment this is a really good opportunity with the potential changing Prime Minister, and I do say potential because it may not be the case, that we might want to affiliate a little bit with the work that Andy Burnham claims he wishes to do in developing community engagement. And that's what he's saying, and that fits exactly with the COIN agenda. So I think there may be something we should think about how to influence that or to engage with that in some way. I think also, Helen, it's great that you're putting things out in the way you are. I think that's wonderful. So you're really broadening the network. So thank you very much for that. And I know, Steve, you've also been doing that with your work, and Peter, obviously, when he joins us. I suppose my background is higher education, particularly interdisciplinary education, crossing all of the health professions effectively, social work, but also under, at one point, education, sport, psychology, and quite a few other things. So I'm very interested. The first time I joined COIN was really my interest in the interdisciplinary aspects that COIN also espouses. I think talking about the agenda evolving, we talked about evolving into young people, particularly with reference to Ellen Milburn's paper, which is due to come out soon, looking at young people and particularly trying to solve the problem of young people not in education or employment or training, the NEETs. So that may be something we should look at. I think that would be really exciting. My own background currently is I'm working as a governor in a very large school, which starts from the age of 4 through to 19 effectively, so it's a through school. But I also do some work with our local art society around community involvement, and at the moment I'm doing some work with schools in the local area as well. So I'm very interested in the agenda as you're describing it at the moment. So let's move on. Thank you.
It's so good to be back here. I'm a GP in Battersea, and it was because I love the kind of soul of what I do that this book, Fighting for the Soul of General Practice, came about with my good friend Jens Full. And it's kind of part theory, part anecdote, which are anonymized, and Finding Meaning in Healthcare, the textbook that came out last year. So I'm kind of quite preoccupied with reclaiming meaning in whatever we're doing, because I kind of see the effects of bureaucracy within ERA too. I'm a GP and an associate dean with the professional development team in London.
Yes, evening everybody, afternoon to our American colleagues. I'm John, I'm a GP in South London, about 5 miles south of Brew, and I teach law and ethics in various places around town, but also in Malta.
I guess for me, I suppose everyone's familiar with Don Berwick's eras of healthcare conceptualization. So era 1 being this era where doctors could do whatever they liked, a lot of protectionism, etc., which gave way to era 2, where we find ourselves now, which is all about measurements and targets and standardization. And I've seen firsthand the turbulences that are generated with an era 2 paradigm, which has kind of become increasingly embedded in my 20 years of practice as a GP, so that now people who are younger than me can't imagine a world without it, because it's all they've known. So everything I have written about is and kind of feel strongly about is about moving into an era 3, which rejects protectionism and reductionism. It's more thoughtful and is centered around trying to find meaning and thinking about the bigger purpose of what we're doing. And I think that this is not the soft stuff at all, because I think if you don't do the right thing for the person in front of you at a particular time, it generates a lot of turbulence. So there's books written about failure demand. And I think that really explains why we're so busy, because so much of what we're doing isn't really necessary. So there's a kind of something about numbers needed to treat, risk reduction, kind of framing what healthcare can do and what it probably shouldn't get involved with, which is quite pertinent if you're thinking about children's mental health, for example. I think that also not considering meaning leads to burnout. I'm sure that that is a big reason why we see such attrition from a profession that people fight to get into, don't they? You know, it's really competitive. It's expensive in terms of time and money and personal kind of sacrifice. And yet people still leave. So it's bonkers. It's a brilliant job. I love being a GP. It's a huge privilege, and I don't understand why we're not kind of appreciative of the privilege of being the keepers of stories. And I'm not kind of like this. So it's not a wishy-washy thing. I think it makes sense from a kind of efficiency point of view, as well as from a personal point of view, and it's the right thing to do as well. Kind of, there's something about how healthcare is conceptualized in the overall kind of idea of health. And, you know, we keep saying it's about 20% of overall health, but what does that mean? Still kind of almost 100% of resource is poured into healthcare, and in increasingly kind of specialized ways. So there's that element of it. I think there's a kind of, it's all very well to advocate things, but when you're worried about getting sued and being defensive, how do you sort of change culture?
To what extent do you think there are people in the general practice world who might be stuck in era 2 of measurement, might be interested to pilot era 4?
Era 4? Tell me about era 4.
Maybe 3 if they wanted to be like slow movers.
I think there's a huge appetite for it, but there's no language, which is why you know, we created the 4-domain model and sort of defined this as a hermeneutic window, finding and creating meaning, because I think things don't exist unless there's a language to describe what is happening. So that's as far as I've got, but there's a big appetite. I've been invited to, I think, every trainers group in London, and kind of people really they notice it. We all notice it, and we want change, but it's just hard to kind of imagine how that would play out.
Consider, if you like, 2 areas of interest. One is this notion of locality, which I'll go back to, and then focus on education, which Linda and I and Sanjeev Ahluwalia produced 1/20th of the compendium about, and maybe Linda might want to pick up something for what I've been saying. So just to remind you, this is going back to being a rather Anglo-centric perspective, but I think it has implications not just for Europe, but actually for the rest of the world. The 10-year plan, as produced by our new government about 18 months ago, focuses on 3 areas. One is the creation of these neighbourhood health centres. Now, interestingly, they are declared to be rolling out in the areas of worst life expectancy first. So there's an explicit resource allocation element to it, which is missed actually in most of the comment. And the idea is that local authorities, councils, voluntary sector bodies, and the health service co-locate in buildings, and that they implicitly work together. Obviously, it's not a given that if you co-located, you work together, but that's the aim. For 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And it really is not clear yet how these bodies, buildings, organizations are going to work with existing primary care and community care structures. It's all being worked out, and it's being up for grabs. But it's obviously clear that it's an opportunity for COIP because it matches with so many of our aims quite explicitly. And just to remind you, the other bits of the 10-year plan are the switch to digital, which is held to be, you know, all things to all men and women, and the switch to prevention rather than treatment, all of which are, well, the last one certainly is motherhood and apple pie, and we've been saying that for many, many years. But the idea is that these 3 drivers work together and therefore improve the health of the nation. We shall see. RCGP Council are on it. The RCGP, the Royal College of GPs, are being asked for their opinions, and they're being asked to work with it. But they are not necessarily fund holders or negotiators in the pay and ration sense, even though notionally GPs are kind of leaders locally. The language they're speaking in the documents I've seen are not yet the language that we speak in COIN, but they're not that far from it. For me, there's an interesting distinction here between theory and practice, and quite how the theory that we tend to speak in COIN and the practice which is being worked on in the corridors of power needs to be bridged in some kind of way. So we need to think about how we can created a few quangos, which have now died, and that's about it. There were no contractual mechanisms whereby people could be trained experientially within primary and community care. And we had to invent them, as it were, on the hoof. So you could look at that as an opportunity as well. We have got to do it if we don't integrate education for healthcare into healthcare. And particularly when you think about the interprofessional dimension to this, where it could work beautifully, but it's one of those tasks which is kind of pushing water uphill most of the time. And the other thing is the collaboration, which is implicit in all this.
It is a sadness that every time you get a policy paper from the Department of Health and related areas, education is not mentioned. If it is at all, it's in a minimalist form. I was just reflecting today on the report that's come out about midwifery and the concerns that have been established around midwives. And I just can't understand why people aren't understanding that the education is the big thing, and that if we're not educating our midwives effectively to look after mothers, and I have a particular view on that because I did quite a lot of work with midwives, and it occurred to me that they needed to be more aware of the feelings of the mother at the time when I was doing that work. It just seems it's never mentioned. It's very frustrating, but everything you've said, absolutely agree with it. Now, there is such a thing as a Council of Deans of Health, and there is the Council of Deans of Medicine as well, and they're very good centres where people are gathered together and are interested in ideas. So I wonder if there's something about going into that group, John.
My suggestion would be that we work with the people we know. So we have got some friends in high places or semi-high places. And some of them buy the fact that, for example, IPE has got to be a strand for the future, that embedding universities in communities has got to be a strand for the future. And there are various educational methodologies you can use to make that happen more. And we should actually push where we see open doors rather than necessarily going to the top. For example, Tony's experience in Brent, working particularly with the elderly, will probably give him an intro into the various educational bodies that deal with elderly care and frailty education and all of that. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, but those sorts of connections may be more fertile.
I know the Manchester model does involve working, that's Andy Burnham's approach, does involve working with universities, and that's really one of the strengths, I think.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Very likely that I'll have lots to do with professionalism, teaching at St Mary's, which is the new medical school in Twickenham, in the next few months. And it's a community-oriented medical school that kind of holds social accountability to be one of the kind of defining features. So there could be a possibility of some collaboration there, I think.
That's really exciting, because a new medical school is going to be interested in new ideas, presumably.
Yeah, exactly.
Where's it come through? First of all, from John Ashton. I think most people will know John Ashton is a leader, has been a long-term leader in public health and done some remarkable work, particularly including with the WHO, I believe, with the Healthy Cities, Franklin. He's sent his comments, which are very, very encouraging. Hopefully the arrival of Andy Burnham, there we go, he's up again, as a new Prime Minister in the next few weeks, will mean that the work that COIN has been carrying out over recent years is coming to fruition at exactly the right moment. So that's all good news. I'm optimistic that Andy will embrace the radical COIN agenda with enthusiasm. What we must now do is take this to his attention, which I absolutely agree with, and bring this to his attention through the northern sorry, I'm trying to read this, it's quite small, through the northern period of his first 6 months. So what we're really he's suggesting is we need to get in early and develop, encourage him with the ideas from COIN and disperse them in his area. Sadly, I can't make this meeting this month as I will be away. So he's basically saying move fast in the first 6 months of Burnham's reign, assuming Burnham becomes the Prime Minister. Peter Whitehouse, I think everybody's met Peter on many occasions. Our story of producing the document, that's the compendium, is primarily about primary care intervention in the world. So it is essential that we walk our talk in our process, i.e. community involvement, systems thinking, integrative, lifelong learning, and transdisciplinary interprofessional care engaging, etc. Also, one of Peter's very great passions is planetary health, and he talks about, I see planetary health, One Health, as a critical new framework for viewing human health in community. New pandemics, the slowing of the AMOC, that's the Atlantic change in currents, isn't it? The Atlantic risk of the Atlantic flow changing to result in loss of the Gulf Stream, for example, as a possible concern and risk. And of course, the super El Nino, which is happening now, will direct us towards social and natural communities in bioregions. So if you're asking what will change human behavior individually and collectively, we must include the arts and humanities, the outside culture and inside sense of self in relationship to others, including nature, to go hand in hand. Arts, and especially the new humanities, will be a key. I wonder what and he says, I think he means greenwashing. He said greed washing, but I think he means greenwashing. New humanities centres at my fellowship home, because he has a fellowship with Oxford, will do for that effort. Maybe we need a case story of the planet and the art to ground our efforts.
I've heard push at the doors we can push at that we've already got accessible to us. There are various think tanks and groups that exist, like, for example, the Council of Deans for Health, that we should be identifying and then perhaps approaching, even if it's as little as sending just our stuff, let alone actually making focused interventions in their directions. Working with universities, particularly the ones that we can. Rupel's already mentioned Herthing, and Imperial is another one we got very good links with. And then there's Liverpool we've got good links with, and others. Of course, Anglia Ruskin is already with Sanjeev developing kind of thinking. My handwriting is terrible. Youth, the idea of that the whole thinking of compartmentalized thinking that we're worried about inside healthcare affects every other institution in the world as well, particularly the UK. Its compartmentalized approach to education is tragically wrong and misguided and affecting youth in a very bad way. And Alan Milburn's report on that, which is 200 pages long, and every line is brilliant, but it's a heck of a read, is merely displays the problem. He is going to be writing the solutions, inverted commas, or the next stage in the autumn, which gives us a possibility to influence that paper. David Collington knows Alan Milburn quite well. He was once, I think, was he Secretary of State for Health once upon a time, or something like that. Brilliant mind. So where am I up to? Youth. I've got a feeling youth is going to be, and Sanjay has already said this, a potentially important new direction for COIN. And we can leave our stuff around healthcare where it is, and people can run away with it if they like. And like we did with our stuff on mental health a few years ago, and our stuff on end of life care, which we did a few years ago, we can do the same stuff with the same approach with healthcare, and move on to something else like youth and music. That's another one, and the arts as well. We need real time examples, lots of them. We've done enough on the theory, we've done enough on the arguing what's wrong with the way things are, and we've done enough even on what specifically policy making needs to happen. What about examples? I think that's the next thing.
Well, apologies for my lateness. I've been, other Zoom calls were getting in the way there. So those of you who don't know me, I'm Margaret Hanna, a former Director of Public Health and Director of Health Programmes at International Futures Forum, a small educational charity based in Scotland. And we've been really pushing fresh thinking to address the global problematic that we are facing as a species, as a society, as a planet. So lots of insights to help. And my own particular passion obviously is within the health system itself and how to navigate a whole system transition from one that is body part medicine to one that is much more integral and connecting with healing and recovery in a more systematic way, and drawing on resources that have hitherto been pretty marginal to our discussions and debates about our health in this country, because health tends to get equated to the NHS. And so there's a lot that's invisible to the discourse about NHS problems, which is happening on the margins and bubbling up now, because as the NHS is overwhelming, becoming overwhelmed, not able to kind of keep up with the programme, these other ways of being, doing, knowing are moving into view. And I see COIN's work as being part of that, making visible and framing what we're doing in a way that is coherent and attractive to those who wish to find new pathways out of the conundrums that we're in. So I find, just to touch on the universities front, I formerly worked on the Scottish graduate entry medical programme and designed a public health strand for that work. And one of the first things we did for those graduate entry students was to put them out into community projects across Fife and Tayside. So they spent, I think, it was only about 24 hours altogether, but in their first term of the course, with drug addiction services or homeless services or whatever it was, to see the world from a very different perspective, and that was very powerful in terms of becoming embedded in communities. In terms of places where lots of good things are happening, well, a lot of people in this call will know of their favourites. I think there is much more to be done to make that visible and coherent and amplify the signals that are there, because it gives hope to us all that it can be done. And I've been working with my own kind of connector pioneering network, of which Paul is a regular member on my calls that I host, who are trying to do this. And so there's a sort of parallel path there. In terms of other parallel paths, the Health Creation Alliance, the College of Medicine and the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine have got an event next week, which is the third of 3, whereby they are collaborating with kind of the next step agencies like Nature England and all sorts of other players who've got a part to play in creating health in our country. And this event is going to be at the Parliament, Westminster Parliament, with a whole discussion with politicians there to try and really signal, again, this is beyond prevention now. Prevention is still quite tied into a disease-based model, whereas health creation is what I think this network is about. That if we invest in relationships, if we invest in life-giving and life-enhancing activities and opportunities, bringing in the arts, as you say, Paul, making that connection to nature, as Peter has been talking about, then that's the way to create health. And I think alongside that is the power imbalance that we've got at the moment between those who receive services and those who provide them. And I think part of this transition will need to be about, this word empowerment is really heavily overused, and it's becoming meaningless. And I think we have to find new forms of governance and decision making around how we allocate resources that is over and above the kind of devolved budgets, and much more about how the public itself is involved in if you like, commissioning services in a broad sense. Anyway, and then the final point you make, Paul, about youth. IFF is very interested in this theme. Has been exploring what we call the quarter life crisis, and my work on kit bag and the various kind of conversations around creating safe enough spaces to share how things are, not bottle it up, but also to develop the kind of empathy and relationship that's going to put you in good stead to ride through the life challenges that you face.
It strikes me that we've got quite a lot agreed. David Peters was going to say something along the lines that the Journal of Holistic Healthcare is up for all of this. Love it, want to be joined at the hip. We'll talk about academic citations, whether we want that or not. That's a nicety that doesn't necessarily matter today, but we want to continue the idea of the flow of ideas and examples going there through to PCC, that you've heard from Helen, who's had to leave right now, to everywhere that we can reach. So we'll have all these tens of thousands of followers of one kind or another receiving small blogs that are summaries of papers. And, of course, these meetings, as those of you who don't know, these meetings are recorded and then edited down, out of which a 2,000 character summary and a one-page blog is produced to summarize this conversation. So there is a follow-on of what we're doing here. Well, we can continue that infrastructure for as long as we like. In fact, we can have several routes of it if we wanted, in order to disseminate the ideas and go off in different directions. Youth over here, faith communities over here, internationalism over here, whatever. So that's sort of close to being agreed. Hattie Warboys is going to be holding the July meeting last Tuesday in July, where she's going to be talking about children and the use of the arts, and particularly music and dance, to develop them, which fits awfully well with the attention to youth.
Future benefit is what, if anything, has been done to use the idea of towards a million change agents, and have we picked up that perspective and worked on it?
Sounds a bit of homework for you there, Steve. What has been done about towards a million change agents?
If I could jump in here for a second.
Yeah, go on.
I just say that that's a lot. The intent of this book we're working on right now is to address that issue, and I think it's all about that. Public health is everybody's business. I said that to Bernd Harlan one time, and she said if it's everybody's business, it's nobody's business, and nobody's going to do anything about it.
Yeah.
And I think that there's truth to some of that, but the reality is everybody's business, and you're doing a great business, and it's lovely to be here to hear you all talking and stuff. It's really music to my ears and heart. We learn and how we think that we're all in this together, and that doesn't say that we're all in the same boat. We're definitely not all in the same boat. We're in the same storm, and we are all in the same storm. But we have lots of different boats, and everybody's going to do it in different ways and stuff, and we can learn from each other. But it's great healing reality to be in a meeting and talking with friends and stuff. All right, this relationship building, and that's key and stuff. And you've been pointing all that stuff out. And so anyway, from my side, I'd like to just I am going to send Paul a letter asking if you could help with the writing of this book, in the sense that what we're trying to do is that we've generated 18 chapters, which we'll share with you some summaries of what that is all about, which I think it touches on pretty much everything that you've been talking about and maybe puts it in a somewhat different framework and stuff. But we know that there are people doing amazing things, addressing all those issues. And what we want to do, and coming from WHO, a lot the problem that I've seen, and then we're trying to reflect in this, is that they're very good on kind of like setting standards and stuff like that. But in terms of operationalizing stuff, it has to. They're in giving advice and they're giving guidance and stuff, but they're still struggling to get into. It's up to us to put it into practice and stuff. That's not to glorify the people in the front line, because the people in the front line need all those other people to provide them with the scientific blah 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 and with So one of the things we found in this process, and I'll stop in a second, is that we found out that there's been people working on the development of commons realities, how people can work together on multi-centric governance bases and stuff like that. And I don't know, it blew my mind, the fact that we found out that there was a woman who won a Nobel Prize in early 2000s for studying the commons and stuff, coming from a political economic point of view. I don't know how much people know Elinor Ostrom. Do you know Elinor Ostrom? Check out Elinor Ostrom. Okay, she won a Nobel Prize for showing that it wasn't that things could be organized and run by not just governments, which they thought. There was the tragedy of the commons. That was like the whole thing. That if you had a commons, that people were always going to fail because people would cheat and steal and take from each other. And the only way you can do that is have a government run it or private sector run it. And she showed that there was lots of examples of people running those all over the world and major stuff. And she won the Nobel Prize for this. And she showed 8 different ways that helped that. So I just suggest that you tune into that. Anyway, I'd like to ask, and I'll send it through Paul, for you to identify, if you know people from all over the different parts of the world that are doing things like yourselves and around different issues, particularly around the subjects that we cover through this book, which I think you'll find is not going to be any surprise to you, the kind of things that we're talking about here. So, and it's about trying to create some kind of a storytelling that will address and vibrate with people so that they can feel that they're part of this process and stuff, and they can identify with them and learn from groups like yourselves about how people are doing that and maintaining their sanity in this particular reality we're facing right now in the world.
Yeah, I think I'm just noticing a bit of a phase shift going on in terms of the urgency of getting some of this knowledge and practice out into usable forms in the way that Franklin's talking about here. I was in the States earlier this year in Northern California, and they had a kind of community resilience team training whereby you're taught how to manage when the first responders are overwhelmed. How to actually manage, even a fracture or something like that. Quite significant injuries, with forest fires, etc., etc. And I was the local community, families, parents, they're very happy to pick up some of these practical skills because they know it will help them when the first responders are not there. And I think there's something about a reality check here around our thin on the ground health service and what really useful practical knowledge could the public gain from right now. I mean, all that stuff that suddenly had to be produced last week with the heat wave about how to stay cool, this stuff should be out there routinely and almost in that Sweden pamphlet form, how to prepare for climate crisis, how to prepare for all those they're actually foreseen eventualities now. We can anticipate them, we just don't know when they're going to happen.